O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. For you truly are our creator, provider, comforter, healer, our strength, and our Redeemer. Amen. Fly Away Home is a story about Amy and her Canadian geese. Amy, a young girl, found some abandoned geese eggs and kept them warm and safe until they hatched. And it seems that geese, like many other animals, attach themselves to the first living thing they see and follow it wherever it leads. It's called imprinting. Well, 16 eggs hatched. And the chicks saw Amy and thought she was their mother. And there are so many lovely scenes in the movie showing them playing together, following her all around the beautiful countryside. And the story unfolds in amazing ways about the power of that bond between her and her geese, and how she used that bond to teach them to migrate and become wild, free birds. It's an inspiring movie, and it demonstrates the trusting relationship between a leader and a follower, a role model, and those who learn by watching and copying others. You may have heard this little trick that I found. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you hang my first painting on the refrigerator, and I immediately wanted to paint another one. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you feed a stray cat, and I learned that it was good to be kind to animals. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make my favorite cake for me, and I learned that little things can be the special things in life. When you thought I wasn't looking, I heard you say a prayer, and I knew there is a God that I could always call to, and I learned to trust in God. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make a meal and take it to a friend who was sick. And I learned that we all have to help take care of each other. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you give of your time and money to help people who had nothing. And I learned that there are those who have something should give to those who don't. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you take care of our house and everyone in it. And I learned we have to take care of what we are given. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw how you handled your responsibilities, even when you didn't feel good. And I learned that I would have to be responsible when I grow up. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw tears come from your eyes. And I learned that sometimes things hurt, but it's all right to cry. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw that you cared. And I wanted to be everything that I could be. When you thought I wasn't looking, I learned that most of life's lessons that I need to know to be a good and productive person when I grow up. The gospel message today talks about following Jesus. Jesus asked his followers, "Who do you think I am? Why are you following me?" And those disciples, of course, had been following him for a while and seeing all these things, whether Jesus knew they were looking or not. It sounds profound when Peter calls Jesus the Christ, or a Bible study we talked about, different versions say whether he called him the Christ or the Messiah. But Jesus knows that Peter doesn't even know what he's talking about, as he proves very shortly when he starts talking about his grim future and imminent death. Peter tells him to stop saying such things. Don't fool around with us like that. Perhaps even stronger language, it would say rebuke, didn't it? Peter, when he declared Jesus was the Messiah, was expecting Jesus as a Messiah like most people in that time, to win a military victory over those Romans and establish his own kingdom. And of course, Peter and his friends would be the chief officers in this new government. So he didn't want to hear any talk about suffering or death or humiliation or rejection. Certainly doesn't sound like victory to him. And of course, Jesus responds vehemently, calling Peter under the influence of Satan, lured by the temptation for worldly power and glory. And I think, like Peter, we are often set up in our culture to be seeking glory, prestige, becoming rich, becoming famous. Temptations luring us into such self-centered and worldly desires are all around us. There's a teen girls magazine called All About You, and even the title suggests that girls should be focusing exclusively on themselves. And of course, I'm deeply concerned for all of us, but especially for our young people, with all the pop stars and the fads that they're exposed to daily. And I was pleased to read a teenager's response to that magazine. She says, "What has society morphed into but a massive chaos, brainwashing teens to be this way or that, to be accepted? Come on." The worst of it is that they have those gotta have it select sections, which list outrageously priced, tacky items. The models in the magazine weigh at most 105 pounds with perfect features. I can tell you that just looking at the magazine stabbed at my self-esteem. Am I supposed to weigh 105 and wear a size 6 to be in with the style? What kind of message is this magazine sending to the teens of today? That you have to weigh 105, wear Gap clothes, and buy Donna Karan shoes to fit in and to be cool? Why can't there be a magazine that inspires teenagers to be themselves and to be more than cogs and a machine? All we teenagers have the potential to be deep, inquisitive, soulful. But this magazine promotes everything but that. It focuses on image, and that is what society needs to lessen its grip on. They should just go ahead and change the title to All About Image, because after all, that's what it really is. And she ends by saying, "Don't waste your hard-earned money on this piece of pollution." And I hear that as a challenge to us to take our teenagers more seriously, to invite them into deeper communion with God and with us, to offer them alternatives to the me generation and consumerism that is rampant in our society now. Actually, we all need to accept the challenge to go deeper into life, especially as Christians, following Christ's example. Mary Jo Copeland is an inspiration. I read about her. It says, at most homeless shelters, new arrivals are given the basics: a cot, a blanket, and a plain hot meal. Mary Jo Copeland believes that's not enough. At her charity in Minneapolis, she, who drives a car with license plates "Pray Now," doesn't give her clients just a pat on the back or even a gentle caress on the cheek. She gets down on her knees and washes their feet. In a hard-knock world, that simple gesture of compassion is enough to bring tears to the eyes of Wayne Irving, a homeless laborer who arrived in Minneapolis by bus from Chicago. "Nobody ever did this for me," he says, sitting over a basin of hot, sudsy water, as Copeland, wearing a pair of thin rubber surgical gloves, rubs his calloused feet with antiseptic ointment. I've never met a lady like her in my life. That's because there aren't many women like Copeland, with little more than a card table and a couple of coffee pots. She founded a storefront charity years ago on the edge of downtown Minneapolis. Today, she is the guiding light of Sharing and Caring Hands, a $3 million nonprofit community center that caters daily to as many as 1,800 of the city's needy, dispensing everything from hot meals, bus tokens, eyeglasses, and deodorant. It's heartwarming to see thousands of people benefit. Nobody does more to help people in need. Mary Jo is known as a true saint, Minnesota's Mother Teresa. Copeland draws no salary. She says her work springs from a biblical mandate. I believe in what Jesus said about helping the less fortunate in memory of him. That's why I wash their feet. We are commanded to be servants of the poor. In God's kingdom, Jesus says we are to give of ourselves and be servants of one another, especially the least, the lost, and the lonely. This may cost us, whether it's time, whether it's money, pride of place, even perhaps cherished assumptions about God or other people. Jesus is blunt about that. It's not meant to be an easy road with no suffering and no cost to us. Unlike others who promote looking out for number one, seeking an easy and carefree life, Jesus says to give it all up and follow him, trusting that he will lead us in the right paths. His kingdom is not like any that has ever been before, so it's not surprising that the disciples didn't understand. And actually, it's not easy for us to understand and accept either. But Jesus had been trying, and he continues to try to show them and us what God's kingdom was like. They saw him healing the sick and the blind, feeding the hungry, both physically and spiritually, teaching, showing compassion and concern for all of creation, for all the situations that people live in. This week we've been remembering 9/11, when so many people sacrificed in amazing ways for others, such as Isaac, who is a Washington, D.C. police officer with no regard for his own life, entered the Pentagon and rescued a host of people. He was a native Hawaiian living in Virginia, and he helped 8 people to safety by carrying them out of the carnage. And then he returned to the smoke and fire to guide others who were blinded and confused. He shouted, "If you can hear me, head toward my voice." And 5 crawled toward him and followed him to safety. If you can hear me, head toward my voice. Just as the disciples, then and now, who hear Jesus' voice and seek to follow him. He who never picked up a sword, who never taught his disciples military tactics, but was willing and able to take on all the authorities in verbal debates that showed his intelligence, his sense of mercy and justice for all. He never bragged about who he was, and he even told others not to. Most of all, he constantly listened to God and followed God's requests to show us how we too should follow and abide in God. So Jesus asks, who do you say that I am? Why are you following me? And I invite you to take a few moments to consider who Jesus is to you today, and why are you his follower? Is he your Savior, your friend, your comforter, your companion, your Redeemer, grace, mercy, love, justice maker? The list could go on. On the little card that you received in your bulletin, I invite you to think a little bit and to write down, if you've got something to write with, who you say that Jesus is for you today. And you can keep it and take it home with you to remind you who you follow and why. So let's take a few minutes and consider who Jesus Christ is for you today.